Hello and welcome to the SCP Foundation's instructional videos. I am Dr. Magic, Senior Researcher at Site-19, and if you are seeing this video, then congratulations! You are now officially a member of the SCP Foundation. This instructional video will provide you with an overview of all the information that you may or may not need as a member of the facility. We'll be going over clearance levels, personnel classifications, SCP classifications, object classes, as well as an understanding of some of the mobile task force you may see running around the site. Our first section will be labeled Security Clearance Levels. As some of you might have guessed, security clearances granted to Foundation personnel represent the highest level or type of information that they may or may not be granted to. However, having any given clearance level does not automatically grant access to all information at that level. Personnel are only granted access to information on a need-to-know basis, and at the discretion of the disclosure officer overseeing the respective departments. Level 0, for official use only. Level 0 clearance is given to non-essential personnel with no need to access information regarding anomalous objects or entities in the Foundation's containment. Level 0 access is typically held by personnel in non-secure clerical, logistics, or janitorial positions at the facility, with no access of operational data. These clearances are typically given to D-class, janitors, high-ranking police officers, and people in government positions, such as the Secretary of State and Homeland Security. Level 1, Confidential. Level 1 security clearance is given to personnel within working proximity, but with no direct, indirect, or informational access to anomalous objects or entities in containment. Level 1 security clearance are typically granted to personnel working with clerical, logistics, or janitorial positions at the facility, with containment capacity or otherwise must handle sensitive information. Level 1 clearance is typically given to assistants, janitors, security trainees, and any other low-class personnel. Level 2, Restricted. Level 2 security clearance are given to security and research personnel that require direct access to information regarding anomalous objects and entities in containment. Most research staff, field agents, and containment specialists hold a Level 2 security clearance. Level 3, Secret. Level 3 security clearance is given to senior security and research personnel that require in-depth data regarding the source, recovery circumstances, and long-term planning for anomalous objects and entities in containment. Most senior research staff, project managers, security officers, response team members, and mobile task force operatives hold Level 3 clearance. Level 4, Top Secret. Level 4 security clearance is given to senior administration and require access to site-wide and/or regional intelligence, as well as long-term statistic data regarding Foundation operations and research projects. Level 4 security clearance are typically only held by site directors, security directors, and mobile task force commanders. Level 5. Level 5 security clearance are given to the most highest ranking administrative personnel within the Foundation, and grant effectively unlimited access to all strategic and otherwise sensitive data. Level 5 security clearance are typically granted to, as well as High Command. Personnel classifications. Personnel classifications are assigned to personnel based off their proximity and potential dangerous anomalous objects, entities, and phenomena. Class A. Class A personnel are deemed essential to and are not allowed direct access to anomalies under any circumstances. When circumstances require Class A personnel to be in direct proximity to such anomalies, such as in the case of facility housing containment units, Class A personnel are not allowed access to those areas of the facility containing such anomalies, and are to be kept in secure areas at all times. In the case of an emergency, Class A personnel are to be immediately evacuated to a designated and secure off-site location. Are always Class A personnel. Class B. Class B personnel are those deemed essential to local Foundation operations, and may only be granted access to objects, entities, and anomalies that have passed quarantine and have been cleared of any potential mind-affecting effects, or mimetic agents. In the event of a containment breach or hostile action against the Foundation facility, Class B personnel are to be evacuated to designated secure off-site locations as soon as possible. Class C. Class C personnel are personnel with direct access to most anomalies, not deemed strictly hostile or dangerous. Class C personnel can have direct contact with potentially mind-affecting or mimetic properties, may be subjected to mandatory quarantine and psychiatric evaluation as deemed necessary by security personnel. In the event of a containment breach or hostile action against the Foundation facility, non-combatant Class C personnel are to either report to secure lockdown areas or evacuate at the discretion of the on-site security personnel in the case of a site-wide breach or other catastrophic event. Class D. Class D personnel are expendable personnel used to handle extremely hazardous anomalies and are not allowed to come into contact with Class A or Class B personnel. Class D personnel are typically drawn worldwide from the ranks of prison inmates convicted of violent crimes, especially those on death row. In times of duress, Protocol 12 may be enacted, which allows Class D personnel are to be given regular mandatory psychiatric evaluations and to be administered an anesthetic of at least Class B strength or terminated at the end of the month, at the discretion of the on-site security or medical staff. In the event of a catastrophic site event, Class D personnel are to be terminated immediately, except as deemed necessary by on-site security personnel. Class E. Next we will be discussing object classes. All anomalous objects, entities, and phenomena requiring special containment procedures are assigned an object class. An object class is part of the standard SCP protocol and serves as a rough indicator of how difficult an object is to contain. Object classes are for the purpose of identifying containment needs, research priority, budgeting, and other considerations. An SCP's object class is deemed by a number of factors, but the most important factor is difficulty and the purpose of its containment. Safe. Safe class SCPs are anomalies that are easily and safely contained. This is often due to the fact that the Foundation has researched the SCP well enough that containment does not require significant resources, or that the anomaly requires specific and conscious activation or trigger. Classifying an SCP as safe, however, does not mean that handling the object or activating it does not pose a threat. Euclid. Euclid class SCPs are anomalies that require more resources to contain completely, or where containment isn't always reliable. Usually this is because the SCP is insufficiently understood or inherently unpredictable. Euclid is the object class with the greatest scope, and it's usually a safe bet that the SCP will be in this class if it doesn't easily fall into any of the other standard object classes. As a note, any SCP that's autonomous, sentient, and or sapient is generally classified as Euclid due to its inherent unpredictability. Keter. Keter class objects are anomalies that are extensively difficult to contain, consistently or reliably. Containment procedures often being extensive and complex. The Foundation often cannot contain these SCPs well due to not having solid understanding of the anomaly, or lack of technology to properly contain or counter it. A Keter SCP does not mean the SCP is dangerous, just that it is simply very difficult or costly to contain. Thaumal. Thaumal class Neutralized. Neutralized SCPs are anomalies that are no longer anomalous, either having been intentionally or accidentally destroyed or disabled. Other non-standard object classes may include Explained. Explained SCPs are commonly articles about anomalies that are completely and fully understood to the point where their effects are now explained by mainstream science or phenomena that have been debunked or falsely mistaken as an anomaly. And now for some mobile task forces that you may see wandering around the site. One of the least common ones that you may see would be MTF Unit Alpha 1, codename. This specific task force overall mission, MTF Unit Epsilon 6, codename. This task force specific mission specializes in investigation, containment, and subsequent cleanup of anomalies in MTF Unit Epsilon 11, codename Nine-Tailed Fox. Mobile Task Force Epsilon 11 handles internal security for the SCP Foundation. Under oversight by MTF, they are a special ops force deployed to Foundation sites when as such, most of their operations are classified. MTF Unit NU-7. Mobile Task Force NU-7 is a battalion-strength force consisting of 3 company-sized elements and special operations, tank platoons, helicopter squadrons, chemical platoon, combat engineer platoon, squad, plus additional combat specialists. MTF Unit NU-7 is based primarily and is tasked with responding to incidents involving MTF Unit Theta-6, codenamed the Two-Headed Bears. MTF Unit Theta-6 is a battalion-strength force specializing in both the protection of the facility from outside incursion, either by as well as the containment and maintaining of the SCPs and anomalies and phenomenon held at the site. MTF Unit Pi-1, codenamed. The task force overall mission specializes in the investigation, containment, and subsequent cleanup of anomalies in densely populated urban areas, particularly in the current location is at. The last one we'll be discussing would be MTF Unit Tau-5, codename. The task force mission. Now, if you see any of these MTF units at your site, be advised to stay out of their way and stay in secure location until their work is done. Do not interfere with them under any circumstances. This concludes the SCP Foundation's instructional video. I am Dr. Edward Magic, Senior Researcher at Site 19, and I hope that you all have a great and lovely day.